Welcome back to the Nikki Clarke Radio Show. The show is about conversations that matter, and we invite people from all walks of life to come and talk about their stories of transformation. And it helps us to be uplifted, to be informed, and to transform our own lives one story at a time. So I'm really excited to talk to a really powerful woman in her own right. She is an advocate for disability rights, and she's also got quite the story of her journey. So without further ado, please welcome Tracey Field to the show. How are you doing today, Tracey?
I'm great, Nikki. Thanks so much for having me on your show. Thank you.
Oh, it's a delight. Thank you very much for your time. Now, Tracey, you were born in London, England, and raised in Canada.
Yes.
And in 1986, you were diagnosed with pulmonary sarcoidosis. Is that correct?
Right. Sarcoidosis. Yep. Yes.
Sarcoidosis, and you are living with it, but you are living a life of grace, and you're not living with any limitation despite your circumstance. So let's talk about all of that, and let's first off begin with, where it all started. Tell us about your background leading up to where you are as a champion for disability rights.
Actually, after moving here from England, and I did go back to live in England for 7 years before permanently residing here in Mississauga. However, it was after high school that I was diagnosed with pulmonary sarcoidosis, and my diagnosis was just through a simple x-ray. I didn't actually know I had it, and that tends to be mostly the case with a lot of people with pulmonary sarcoidosis. They don't actually know that they have it. It is what's referred to as a snowflake disease because it differs in each individual person. For myself, I had surgery for something else, and they needed to do a follow-up x-ray. And at the same time, I had a hacking cough every morning. And when I went and did the x-ray, they contacted me and asked if I had a cold. And I said, well, I have this extreme cough, and I don't understand it, a very mysterious cough. And they asked me to come back in, and they did a biopsy, and through the biopsy, they discovered I had pulmonary sarcoidosis. And I've never heard of that before. And that was 1986, and this is 2019, and still a lot of people have no idea what sarcoidosis is. And in a nutshell, sarcoidosis is an inflammation, and it's an inflammatory disease that affects multiple organs in the body, primarily the lungs and the lymph nodes. And it represents itself by these abnormal masses or nodules that formulate granulomas. And these consist of inflamed tissues that form on certain organs of the body. And this can present itself in the lungs, the brain, your liver, skin, eyes, whatever it is. Mine is limited to the lungs. And with this sarcoid that I have, or what generally people have, it rather than in a healthy body, your cells, your immune cells, when they attack viruses, etc., they gather together, attack this virus, and move on. With people with sarcoidosis, for some reason, something goes wrong in those immune cells that they cluster together and clump. And they just kind of find it, kind of don't know what else to do. And then they formulate these granulomas, and then they go on the attack rather than helping the body heal. And that's basically, in a nutshell, what sarcoidosis is. From there, I moved on, going through the ups and downs of finding out what it is that you can use to, you can't cure sarcoidosis. You can apply treatment, generally tends to be prednisone, which is very harsh medication on the body, and hopefully that will reduce and send it into remission. there's three basic outcomes with one that is diagnosed with sarcoidosis. One being leave it alone and it will disappear as it had appeared in the body. Two, it can, you receive maybe about 1 to 3 years of treatment, and after that, the illness is sent into remission. And then there's a third outcome where you are having it for a long term. And unfortunately, that tends to be me. I have the long term. So since 1986, I've had sarcoidosis. I've been on prednisone, which is a shock to many people, since 1986. And as of 2010, my illness progressed to stage 4, where I was placed on oxygen therapy for 24 hours a day. And so this journey now, where it comes to having sarcoid with oxygen, has put me into a new dimension, because while I was on having sarcoidosis and I was still able to do work, I was working, I was doing much of anything. I really, and as I said, I was not really aware of what it meant truly to have sarcoidosis. And back then in the 80s and 90s, diet and exercise, those things weren't as known as it is right now. Lots of people now that are diagnosed are using diet and alternate forms of medication to combat the symptoms and sarcoid itself. But I went through the early stages or the early days of it. So once I now have reached the stage of being on oxygen, that's when I come to realize how the infrastructure of my city, my community, how my government, how things don't necessarily work in favor for people with disabilities, where they are limited now in the things that they are able to do as their counterparty, their able-bodied counterparts are able to do. And I'm seeing this new side as I'm navigating through life, recognizing that buildings, simple buildings, the necessity of having elevators work, the necessity of having doors that are accessible, the navigating downtown Toronto, which is supposed to be the people's city, and when they're having construction, and the route that for those who need wheelchair accessibility is rerouted elsewhere, sometimes around dangerous sections, as opposed to, accessible routes for able-bodied people. I have the experience of trying to navigate into certain buildings, more difficult in Toronto than it is Mississauga. Mississauga, I find, is a lot more easier to navigate. I find that the use of TTC is absolutely out of the question, so I have to drive everywhere I go. And Toronto was not built for, and through restructuring, Toronto was moving to a more non-vehicle area, and that is pushing me further and further out of being able to do anything in downtown Toronto. One key example, I was really interested in attending the cherry blossoms that was happening at High Park. And I was this is something I want to experience. And I've been to High Park before. I've driven into High Park. Now they wanted to make it pedestrianized. So they weren't allowing any vehicles other than Wheel-Trans to drop off and pick up. Well, I can't take Wheel-Trans because I have to use portable oxygen tanks that weigh 15 pounds each. And how many I have to take depends on where I'm going and how long I'm going to be there. And it's like a gas tank. The more I use to get me to that destination lessens the time that I'm going to be at that destination. So if I have to adjust the rate of flow and I'm using up half the tank or 3/4 of the tank to walk the journey to get to Hyde Park, to the area, that lessens the time that I have available to be at that area, because then I need the same amount of oxygen to get back to my vehicle and to go home. So I couldn't go. There's just no way I can be able to walk and carry 3 tanks, 15 pounds each, to the top of Hyde Park and back down again. So that rules that out for me. So these are the things that it's becoming more and more aware to me, and the struggle that I see that the government is not necessarily recognizing. They're not looking at the full scope of what people with varying forms of disability have to encounter.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's a really amazing observation, and I thank you so much for, sharing that so articulately, because you share from a very, interesting perspective of something as simple as going to see the cherry blossoms, which is something that people travel far distances come to see. And we take for granted that, that's just a simple thing to do, but it would seem like a milestone at this point because of all the parts in play for you. And that shouldn't have to be a barrier to you just to experience a natural beauty like that. So that really puts things into perspective for me, and I really empathize with you. And I feel like so much can be done, but we just need voices like yours and many others to come together to really advocate for this. Because can you tell us more specifically the disability community? Can you tell us in terms of the numbers and where people are at in terms of what they need? I understand your experience, but what have you been hearing, and what are some of the facts in terms of the numbers in the community?
Well, I have joined a lot of social media groups that are associated with sarcoidosis and pulmonary fibrosis, and which I don't necessarily have, but is along those lines of the scarring on the lungs, etc. But and other some smaller groups as well with other people with other illnesses. Basically, what is one of the things that is the common factor is healthcare, knowledge of doctors and healthcare, access to doctors who understand sarcoidosis, understand this disease, and also too funding going towards research for a cure. And unfortunately, because sarcoidosis is one of these illnesses that it's a part of the Lung Association, but kind of on a side corner there, the funding goes towards other things before it would go towards sarcoid research. So, one of the things I would love to have is to have a sarcoidosis awareness, which usually happens in April every year. And it's kind of, it'd be great to bring that kind of awareness to Ontario, because there are quite a really astonishing amount of people that are affected by sarcoid. And when I had briefly moved to Alliston, I came across 2 other people who had sarcoidosis. And I was shocked that I've never have ever met anybody who had sarcoidosis, even knew what it was. I've even had medical professionals that didn't even know what sarcoidosis was. But to find 2 people that were afflicted with it, but however, they were the case of one was a case of no treatment required and it disappeared, and the other one had minimal treatment and it disappeared. So again, we're in 2 different categories. There, and they're right. So that's where it ended with them. But what I do hear a lot of is really regarding awareness and healthcare awareness, treatment, because the only treatment right now that is prescribed is prednisone. Prednisone is what is referred to as the devil's tic tac. It is harsh on the body. It depletes the bones. It has a lot of side effects, all negative. But the only thing that it does is it actually does sarcoid responds to prednisone. Okay. And so that's the go-to drug. For myself, this is the first year that I am experiencing some bone loss after being on it since 1986. So there's this push to kind of get me on a lowest dosage possible without the sarcoid reacting. Now, when I've gone to certain doctors for, and they're aware of the side effects of sarcoid, it's been great, and I'm very blessed so far to have great doctors that understand the ramifications of somebody that is on oxygen and that is somebody who has sarcoidosis. However, I've had the situation of needing emergency care and the doctor not understanding the significance of sarcoidosis, the significance of being on prednisone, and the significance of having low oxygen levels. And I almost lost my leg because of that. I was very blessed to have a friend that I ran into, and she really, because she was aware of my injury that I posted on Facebook, and she ran into me at Etobicoke General, and she rerouted me directly back to emergency and refused to let me leave until I was seen to by another doctor. And luckily that saved my life, because it would have spiraled right out of control. But the initial ER doctor really made a huge mistake.
Wow.
So, yes.
You can't afford mistakes when your life is concerned.
Not at all. And, it's the numbers when it comes to disability, and that I'm not completely aware of to quote on that. But I do know that a lot of people with disability are struggling with finances. That's a huge major concern, and that's why the article that I saw really resonated with me, because nobody wants to live under the poverty line. No. Nobody, and as you're looking forward or looking towards old age, you're looking towards the future ahead, you don't really want it to be a bleak outlook. And when you're on a disability, it is at times can be bleak. You have society in itself that beats you up, surprisingly enough, when you have a disability. And the horror stories that I can tell, and other people that can tell that have a disability, and what they receive from people, you would think that it would be, kindness and compassion, but it's quite the opposite, quite frankly.
Really?
You have comments from people. I get comments every day, every single day.
Tracey, I'm shocked. So you're saying that people discriminate and they are harsh and they don't have empathy?
Oh, yes. It is surprising to me. It is very surprising to me, because I have had people, I've gone out with friends, and I've had people address the friend and not me.
Like
and
the
talking,
invisible effect.
Mm-hmm. Right. You become invisible, and maybe assume that, perhaps the oxygen, I don't know, maybe it's depleting my brain. I don't know. Maybe I'm incapable of speaking. I don't know. But to see, the conversation, and you're standing right there, and you're included in the conversation because they're speaking about you, but they don't want to speak to you. I've had people go up. I've been out with my mom, and I've had somebody go directly to my mom with me standing there to inquire what's wrong with me. I've had people come up to me. I've had people come up to me, and without even, I don't know them, from a hole in the ground, they've walked straight up to me and asked me what's wrong. Everything's always, what's wrong with you? And it's always that, they're using that hand movement around the nose, because they're indicating the nasal cannula there, and they're saying, well, what's wrong with you? Why? And it's every day. It doesn't matter what you're doing, and they're constantly, I find people, I press the accessibility door, they walk through it. right in front of me. The double takes, the mouth wide open. I mean, it's almost like a movie script. You can write a movie, and these are things you see in a movie, and you think, well, that's not real life. But in fact, it is. So yes, people who have disabilities do receive ill treatment. You get some who are marvelous, fantastic. But, when I started going to the pool, it was one of the things my goal was this year to actually go to the pool. And I was quite, I have to admit, intimidated about going, which is unlike me. But this was a huge step because, let's face it. When I'm putting on a bathing suit, ha ha ha. But in itself, I have to bring this my buddy, which is my oxygen, with me to the pool, and I'm thinking, how am I going to navigate this? And the community center is fabulous. The supervisor, outstanding in making accommodations that I can actually have the tank poolside, which is great. Again, when you have knowledgeable people who don't look at the disability as a limit, but look at it as, okay, we'll reach the goal, we just do it a different way, which is all special needs. It's not about what you can't do. It's like, you can't do it, you probably can't do it this way, but we'll find another route so you can actually accomplish the same goal, the same task. So I was able to go to the pool, but again, the looks, and I'm in a therapeutic pool with people who have some certain limitations, and I still am looked at as if I'm some whatever, So when people with disabilities have to overcome not only their own challenges, their own mental setbacks, depression, you have other people who pile that on as well. And then when you have a government where you don't feel like you're a part of society, but you are an unwanted appendage to society, then you start to feel like, well, then, okay, why am I here? When you want to be a part of, work, you want to work. I have this education. I have my law procedure certificate from Ryerson. I have my, Humber College business administration, and I got my law degree, my law and justice degree from Laurentian, and I can't work. And it's not because I don't want to. I simply can't, because I have to bring, for me to work in an environment with other people, I have to bring oxygen there. And it can't be portable oxygen tanks. It has to be something that's going to run for the whole day. But that's impossible, because that would mean I'd have to have a machine that's there and having a tube running all over the place, which, obviously endangers other people and myself. So portables, well, that's not going to work, because they only last at least 3 hours each, depending on what my activity level is. So, and the greatest hindrance of all, I can't be around anybody who gets sick. My immune system is suppressed. So if you catch a cold, you'll have it for like 3 days coming, 3 days with you, 3 days going. I catch a cold, and we're talking about, I don't know, a month and a half, maybe a couple of antibiotics, throw in some antibiotics inside there, and hope for the best, and hope this doesn't tip the scale on the lung side. So everything is a big thing. So when I'm at home and anybody becomes ill, the mask comes out and the antibacterial, and it's kind of like, stay away. So hopefully I don't catch it. So I can never work in an environment where everybody feels compelled to come to work when they have the flu. As people do, they come in, they'll stay home a day, and then they'll come into work, and they'll bring their colds and their flus, etc. there, and I'll be the one at risk, and I'll be the one off of work. So working becomes a challenge, because then you'll have to see, well, I need to find something I can do at home, and then it becomes a problem with the disability side, because I can't, if I work, I lose my disability.
Right.
Not that disability pays a lot of money, because it doesn't. It doesn't pay a lot at all. However,
and recently with government cuts, we're still reeling from that. Most recently.
Exactly. So if I lose my disability, And they have provisions, because I collect CPP disability. I'm not on ODSP. So with the CPP, if I enter the workforce, there's a certain amount of time that they give you. You have a 3-month probationary period, and then your file is what's called closed, in quotes. But it can be reactivated if you become ill under 2 years. Now, the thing is that for people who have, as the article was talking about, episodic illnesses where you don't know when you're going to be sick. I mean, you can be great for 3 weeks and out for the next 4, and then great for 2 months, and then out for 1 week, and then great again for, you don't know when it comes to different illnesses. And the same thing with myself. I don't know. My illness is non-curable. The only thing left for me is a lung transplant, and that's it. That's my only. It's either continue or you have a lung transplant, and then we enter a whole new realm of, a whole new realm there. It's a complete different world with lung transplants, and dispelling the myths around lung transplants where people believe you get a whole new lease on life, and in fact it's not. It's just an extension, and we don't know even if you're going to be the one that's going to be extended for that period of time. Again, there are too many factors there that are up and down that with people with disability, they can't afford to lose the disability pay. Mm-hmm. They can't. We need to have that. And the government will only allow people on disability to earn $5,500 a year. That's it. That's it. Now, when I tell people you're allowed to earn $5,500, the first thing they say is, a month? And it's like, no, the year. That's it. And after that, you are considered, you're capable of working. So, or you have to kind of like start paying back money, etc. I don't know what $5,500 is going to do, really, to help out. I mean, it can pay for something, but I mean, it's just. I don't have the answer, but I would love a government that would at least work with people in the disability sector to come up with some solutions. Because, again, why would I want to have an outlook of living in poverty when when there are solutions out there?
There are solutions out there. You're definitely extremely qualified with the work that you've put into with your degrees and your willingness, but you don't want to live a life of limitations. There's so much more out there, and you deserve that. You deserve the dignity, and you deserve the attention as a fully functioning citizen in Canada and what you put into. You're also raising 2 children, 2 teenage children who are, they're looking up to you for answers, and they may be inadvertently seeing some of the challenges that you have, and they're I'm sure there are a lot of questions that are running through their head, and it must be they must be entertaining thoughts of like this kind of maybe upset with the whole situation and wondering why you're left to kind of fend for yourself. That's what I'm kind of hearing, Tracey, in your situation. So I know you're not alone, and I'm really grateful for you being so eloquent in sharing your experience and what you'd like to see, because I'm sure there are many voices that would like to connect with you to make that happen. Is there any way, is there a platform where people can reach out to you and you can amplify this voice to get the services you deserve?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I have a page called Disability Rules.
Okay.
Mhm. And I have I really just kind of just post things all disability related, and things just around the GTA. And I'm just trying to work on a blog and get it up and going. Hopefully one day it will get going, which talks about disability in the city. So again, just kind of the day-to-day things that you see that are out there that are affecting people with disability issues.
Okay. Well, excellent. Well, I really appreciate what you're doing, Tracey, to be an advocate for disability rights. It's vital that everyone has a voice, that everyone has a place where they can go to acknowledge what they were going through. And I'm hearing there's a huge gap where that's concerned, and there's an absence of that kind of full-time type of advocacy for you. It's not fair to feel like you're on the fringe of things when you should be in the middle, in the mix with everyone because of who you are and what you're contributing to Canada. So, right. Tracey, thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate it. I am
Thank you, Nikki.
Really
Thank
in
you
awe
so
of what
much.
you do. Oh, it's a pleasure, and it's really I really feel for what you are contending with on a daily basis, and I really want to be part of what you're doing in terms of the movement towards getting proper services for people in the disability community. You know that you have my support. Again, so where can people reach you on Instagram, and where else can they reach you?
Instagram for now, and hopefully when I get my blog up, it will be on disabilityinthecityblog.com.
Okay, excellent. Well, you've been listening to our very special guest, Tracey Field. She is an advocate for disability rights in Ontario, Canada. She resides in Mississauga with her two teenage children, and I really appreciate everything that she's doing, and I really want everyone who is listening, who can empathize or maybe belongs to the disability community, to reach out to Tracey and, as I mentioned before, see if we can really strengthen this voice to get the type of attention that is needed to rise up this community. So, Tracey, thank you very much for your time. I wish you all the best for the Christmas holidays coming up, and all the best for a very bright 2020. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.